Today we are going to, we're going to our agenda. We'll have our remarks from our project manager, then our president, and I'll make brief remarks before an intro our speaker, which will be the Dallas Black Chamber of Commerce. And then following that, we will have our discussion and closing remarks. And so I ask if you all have any, questions, comments, please feel free to write them down, not only from the presentation, but also for our discussion, because this Monday Morning Momentum is meant for us to gather the talent in the brains of our leadership of Black businesses, economies across the state, so that we can build from one another. All right. With that being said, I would like to give the microphone to our project manager, Ms. Kristen O'Neill.
Good morning again, everyone. Hope you all are doing well. I have just one quick announcement. I think we mentioned it before, but the U.S. Black Chamber and Lindustry has kind of garnered this new partnership that gives under-resourced small businesses, Black-owned businesses, a fair chance at some affordable financing. And so a part of that, each regional chamber and some of the local city chambers have their own kind of special codes and special logins to be able to go in through the Lindustry to report and register and get some of their small businesses registered. And so on our newly updated TAAACC website, on our resource page, we have our Lindustry application code that makes sure that TAAACC receives the credit for any of our small businesses that go through the process. And the cool thing about that is USBC and Lindustry is we get a portion of some small proceeds from that, so that TAAACC can continue to do this work and provide different resources like this to our city chamber. So we're really excited about that. I'm going to share my screen and kind of show the resource page from our page, but then I'll drop the link for that so that you guys can have that link to share with your audiences. So. Okay, so can you guys see that?
Yes.
Okay, so here's our new resources page. And again, right here at the top is this USBC and Lindustry partnership. And you literally just use this link and apply here. And this will take you specifically to tax Lindustry registration. So you'll enter your information and sign in, and then you can get your businesses started with loan applications and things like that. So really excited about that opportunity. And there's certainly more to come with that, with extending beyond the USBC's partnership with Lindustry. TAAACC is also in motion with our own partnership with Lindustry as well. And Mr. President, I'll let you talk further about that, but I'm excited that that's something that will continue to grow. That's it. That's all I have.
Thank you, Madam Project Manager. To continue the discussion, Mr. President, Charles O'Neill, please feel free to continue.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, I was going to say that. Yeah, we'll get the proverbial 2 bites at the apple on Lindustry, as Kristen noted. We do have a unique TAAACC relationship with Lindustry, so that we won't run the risk of missing any opportunity to provide this special access to capital linked to Black businesses in our state and that are members of our organizations. And so we look forward to having that complete. And we will have, again, a unique TAAACC industry landing page on the TAAACC website as soon as that is formalized. And we've got all the information to the industry, just waiting for that mock-up or that draft landing page to be delivered to us. And I noticed, Mr. Chairman, you noted that we want to reserve some of these highlight issues for our discussion period, but during our pre-call discussion, Ms. Graham from Corpus raised a couple of issues that, if not on everyone's radar at this point, should bubble quickly to the top. The recent Western District of Texas ruling enjoining MBDA from further operation is one such shot. We know just recently, earlier this year, the case out of Tennessee that short-stopped the SBA's 8A program, and the case out of Houston with the Edward Bloom group, the guy that led the fight against Harvard and University of North Carolina against affirmative action. So we've got this multi-pronged attack on the very things that Black chambers are working for. Just recently, I was in Austin and learned, of course, we did expect it anyway, but learned that there is indeed going to be legislation to include contracting in the state's anti-DEI legislation that was passed this last session. So we know that that's coming at least by January at the start of the legislative session, but we know during pre-file, which starts in September, we'll get a better picture of what is planned to further expand the state's anti-diversity initiatives. We were at the White House on this past Monday with Department of Treasury talking specifically about the MBDA issue. Unfortunately, the ruling came down the day after we were there. However, the one issue that I raised was that it does appear, unfortunately, that we won't even be able to rely on the Department of Justice to ride to the defense of the very policies that the federal government's own policies that sought to expand opportunity to the people that we work for. And so we really, really, really need to be on high alert and begin developing a strategy that all chambers across the state can embrace and incorporate into their advocacy strategies for a couple of reasons. One, as also Ms. Graham noted, that some of the impacts or the implications of these policies have reached into higher education, particularly, but those clearly have impacts at the secondary and the readiness stages of early stage education. But we know that we're losing students and staff at the institutions that were the first to embrace the state's anti-DEI legislation. And so on that note, though they're not directly a business advocacy related issue, we also know that historically Black chambers of commerce have been the font, if you will, the wellspring of civic activity or civic engagement in our communities. And so on that note, in that sense, it is a business related issue, and we have to be able to grow the kind of leadership, the kind of advocacy voice across the state that will allow us to articulate effectively against these policies. On an editorial note, the folk who have put up this legislation are extremely comfortable that they will be successful in implementing to the fullest extent any opportunity that might potentially benefit non-white people. That's kind of graphic, but that is certainly appears to be the intent of their legislation. And we literally cannot afford not to be poised to address a very clear affront to not just the work that we do as chamber organizations, but further an affront to the blood, sweat, and tears that have been donated by Black folk across the history of this state and clearly across the history of the nation. And so if there ever was going to be a trumpet call, a clarion call for the kind of active advocacy for organizations like those that we represent, I think that we're right on the cusp of really needing active engagement of all the Black chambers of commerce across the state, not just those who are on this call. And so I'll end by saying, Mr. Chairman, that those of you on the call really need to be tasked with reaching out to those Black chambers of commerce who are not present on the call to let them know that all hands on deck is the order of the day, and that we really need not just their input, but their active involvement in what I anticipate will be the kind of historic once-in-a-lifetime firefight that we have not seen since the quote-unquote civil rights era. And so that's the early stage. I hope that kind of ignites some of the discussion going forward, Mr. Chairman. I don't think that it's one that we can fit into a very neat little catch, right? This is really indicative of the kind of work that led to the creation of Black chambers of commerce. And so this is, again, I think, a historic moment, and that I certainly intend for us as an organization to be up to the task. So.
Thank you, Mr. President. I agree with you 100%, and that now's the time. This eerily feels that we're going back to a Jim Crow era type with a new iteration. When there was suppression culturally for us, either post Civil War or post Reconstruction, where people are fighting and succeeding to strip away the rights that we've won. I think that's happening again in this new phase. And it's time for us as chamber leaders to be able to be prepared. And one way to be prepared is to be informed and to be educated and to work together. That's why we are on these Monday morning momentum calls, because we don't have the resources to tackle this alone. That's not in our DNA. Our DNA is to work together, so that we can learn from one another, and so that we can move in this space, so that we can come back and preserve and restore and gain freedom, so that our members, our community, are able to benefit and live in this system, or create a system in which their families, their loved ones are being benefited. We are going to have more discussion about what we're going to do at the state level. But what I want us also to do, this is actually a great transition, is to hear from local markets. Last month, we've heard from Corpus Christi, and prior to, we've heard from Abilene. And so now we are going to the city of Dallas, in which the Dallas Black Chamber of Commerce will be able to will make their presentation to the Texas leadership, not only on their organization, but on how they are how they are being an advocate for their local community. Like I said earlier, please feel free to write notes. We will have time near the end for discussion. I want us to have a healthy discussion. We have two individuals from the Dallas Black Chamber on. We have Tigist Solomon, who is on staff at the Black Chamber, and we have the president, Mr. Harrison Blair, that's on. Welcome both of you all, and we're looking forward to our conversation.
Mr. President, Mr. Chair, thank you so much. Mr. President, thank y'all for just the report of all the work that y'all are doing on our behalf. It really does make a difference when y'all are out there on our behalf, helping chambers really make impact. And Mr. Houston or Mrs. O'Neill, if somebody would allow me to share my screen, we do have a brief presentation we'll roll through. It's an honor to be here with you, other chambers. I know how hard y'all are working and how much work goes into supporting businesses and their growth. Creating generational wealth is not cheap, nor is it easy. So today, I hope to show you just from our vantage here in Dallas, some of the tools that we use, some of the programs we have, and some of the work that we get to do really in partnership and kind of behind what TAAACC has already put in place for us to be able to do. So,
good deal. Hey, Harrison, before you get started, I'm not able to share the screen on here. Christian, are you good on that end to share? Okay, perfect. Before you get started, I want to make sure that you're able to share your screen, Harrison. But before you get started, I want to give a special shout out to a past chairman. I see that Chris Herring has joined the call. Chris, thank you for joining. It's good to see you, and welcome to Monday Morning Momentum. And I also want to give a shout out to the Denton Black Chamber of Commerce, in which they had a great event this weekend, in which I attended. Our Vice Chair Carol Guest attended their annual banquet, in which Mr. O'Neill, Mr. President, moderated a healthy discussion on how businesses can thrive in this Texas, or survive in this Texas economy. And so, Mr. President, great job. I think Mr. Gorey's on. Mr. Gorey, great job on your presentation on your program. It was well attended. You had public officials. You had dignitaries there. You had business owners there. You were investing in our young people as they were the entertainment and playing and the music, and so it was a world-class affair that Vice Chair and I really enjoyed and discussed on our drive back. So, great job, Kerry.
We really appreciate it to have the three of you all there. Were the most important dignitaries, I could say. They were in the audience, and we really appreciate you, Charles and Gloria. Thank you for spending that time with us and coming out on a Saturday afternoon, evening, and entertaining us, if you will. Entertain us in a way of not just television entertainment, but this is a big show that we are facing right now, and this entertainment, this show is not necessary for children. So we appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Yeah, buddy. All right, thank you, sir. And please feel free, if you all have any events, please let us know. We want to definitely support. All right, Mr. Blair, the floor is yours.
All right, perfect. Can everybody see my screen?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay, let me see if I got this thing working correctly here. Can't share your screen. Sorry, here is
It should be a box with an up arrow.
Okay, let me see if I've done this correctly. Okay.
Here we go. I think we can see it now.
Okay, let me know when y'all can see. I see it's doing something. Okay, here we go. So, ladies and gentlemen, firstly, thank you for allowing me to share. Mr. President, Mr. Chair, thank y'all for the work y'all are doing. This is all kind of in lockstep with what we have been doing in partnership with TAAACC. So we're excited to share. Ladies and gentlemen, you can call me Harrison. If you have any questions, I do talk fast. So just pull me by the lapel, stop me, and let me know if there's anything that you need me to dig deeper into. And then, of course, Ms. Solomon, if I'm missing anything, please fill that in for our partners and our guests here today. As you look at this, this is our perspectives for 2024. I'm very proud of it because probably 3 years ago, we didn't have a prospectus. We really didn't have a whole lot of anything to welcome people and tell people what we do on a regular day, day to day. And if you're anything like our chamber, it probably has been a journey to get to this point. And most people probably don't know what it is a chamber of commerce does, let alone a Black chamber of commerce, which to me dramatically alters who we are and what we do. And so this is our attempt to just showcase what the America's First Black Chamber does on a day-to-day basis, how we learn from a bunch of different organizations, how other leaders have left pieces of their work to us to really try to structure what we do here today. And the first big change that I made here, really under my leadership at this chamber, was I started to base everything around what we're calling the New Day Initiative, and that is data, advocacy, and economic development. In our chamber, data is the lifeblood of everything that we do. It's how we make decisions about what we're going to advocate for, how we're going to advocate. And then, of course, economic development can mean a lot of different things. As our president, Charles O'Neill, has pointed out on several occasions, it could mean, technical assistance and actually helping people grow their businesses and scale. It could literally be sidewalks and infrastructure or an edifice or a building that you're going to put in a community that will make a change. And I believe that data is the beginning block of how we get to all these different things that we focus on. These are some of our partners who work with the chamber, and it's taken a lot of work from different board members, and really some of what TAAACC has done just upstream has really impacted our ability to get some of these partners and to really grow with some of these partners. So this is a big chunk of the base here. And then, of course, this is our mission. Our mission is we serve as advocates for the creation, the growth, and the general welfare of Black-owned businesses and organizations. And we added organizations because in 2022, the chamber grew 38% alone with just nonprofits. They found out we were a nonprofit, and we started giving them impact metrics on nonprofit work. This is our chair, Randall Bryant. And he is really a political force that has come into the chamber. Some thought maybe it wasn't the greatest force to kind of enter the chamber coffers, but what I understand now from working with this particular chairman and his prowess for politics is that is the chamber moving in several directions at once. You need the politics to really help the business, because without the rule makers, you really can't impact how the rules might really impact your people that you serve in the communities that you serve. So for all intents and purposes, Randall is helping us to add that one important piece to our double-pronged attack. And here are our other board members and board directors. We do have the privilege and pleasure of having a former chair and interim president in Matt Houston, because he provides a ton of knowledge. And I'm going through some of these different board members because I want you to also get a sense of who's on our board and how we're organized. We are primarily a board of small business owners, growing businesses, and of course, entrepreneurs. So folks who work at a high level at other organizations like Texas Instruments, Scottish Rite Hospital, Vista Bank, you name it, they're part of our board in the way we organize. This guy is cool. He leads the organization and the staff side, does a lot of cool work on a day-to-day. We'll talk a little bit about some of what the focus is. In the chamber, we do have 4 items that are a part of our 100-year birthday that are a focus for us. And these were built with fingerprints from every board member, every person who works with us, who's a partner outside the organization, some donors, but most importantly, we really talked to members to get a sense of what we should be focused on for our 100th birthday. And the first part of what we're going to do by 2026, November 15th, is we're going to have 3,000 due-paying members. The chamber is currently at 900 due-paying members, but with so many businesses now moving into Dallas, coming from different parts of the country or different regions in the state, we want to try to get our membership active ranks up to 3,000 so that every member has a bigger field to play in and a bigger opportunity to make more connections and create generational wealth. Pillar 2 is a regional footprint. We now have members that are joining us from many different surrounding areas as well as different states. So now we have more of a regional mandate to start serving some of those members. And what that means to us is partnership. We need to be partnered with the different chambers that really make up North Texas. We haven't done a great job of that. And now that we have members who are in some of these communities and areas, we want to be partnered with how we serve them, because whatever we don't do, there are a lot of different chambers that have a lot of different focuses, and we're not trying to learn a bunch of new tricks, but we do want to make sure we serve well. And a lot of that is making sure that we're connected to our partners, and our partners are also working with those members, and they're getting the benefit of being in a network of Black chambers. So that's very important to us. Number 3 is groundbreaking for our new headquarters. We're working toward really making some kind of major development happen on the corner of Malcolm X and MLK, which in Dallas is one of 3 major metropolitan areas that has this corner or has these 2 streets to meet. And instead of it just being an office building for the chamber, what I hope is that it'll be a public-private partnership, and it'll also have mixed-use development kind of a vibe and flavor to it, where people from all over the community can come and utilize this space for growing their business and making great impact in community. So we're hoping to see that happen by 2026, so that we can take part in those cool credit offers and opportunity zones that offer a bunch of cool low risk opportunities for folks. And then, of course, this is all a part of the Southern Dallas Business District on MLK. There's a lot of development that's happening on one end of MLK called the Forest Theater, which is a historic theater that has, of course, been in South Dallas for a very long time. And then on the other end, if you've been privileged enough to visit probably the greatest state fair in the country right here in Dallas, then you've seen Fair Park, and it's going to get hundreds of millions of dollars of work. But in the middle of MLK, smack dab in the middle, where we office and reside, there's no real development happening, although there are a lot of plans. So we want to be a catalyst to that development, so that we have what we consider the nicest MLK in the nation. And then an addendum to this that's not listed here, but we started is international trade missions with the United States government to start making impact from this local market to a lot of the other international businesses. And for us, we see that as a part of our mandate, not only to connect businesses within Dallas to opportunities here, but to connect businesses from elsewhere to Dallas and Dallas to the rest of the world. So we're going to the continent of Africa again this year with a number of businesses to figure out how do we make those connections, and how do we get that number from less than 1% of businesses from Black communities operating in global space. So some big opportunities kind of come in there. And then, of course, these are some slides that talk more about the specific vision of what we're going to do in our corridor and how we see the impact metrics there. And of course, I'll make sure everybody has this. So, there's something in here that speaks to you. If there's a partnership opportunity, we can also work with you on that. And then the chamber does monthly member engagements that are pretty important to us, just reaching out and maintaining a large membership base, staying in touch with everyone and making sure that we know what do members want, what kind of programming are they looking for, and how can we help. Probably 3 years ago, we would try to guesstimate what a member might want to see, and we would try to piece together programming each season based on those metrics. But we started to just do the basics and ask people, hey, what would actually help your business? One great survey that we started to put out that gave us access to these programs is we started asking, if you had an hour with a business attorney, or you had an hour with a real estate attorney, what top 5 questions would you ask them? Or if you had an opportunity to sit down with a banker from Chase, what would you ask? And so from those questions and surveys, we developed this programming so that we can touch each member at a different time of the particular day or week. And so the Power Breakfast is an early morning networker that happens from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Because if you got to get to your desk and finish something, or if you got, meetings that are kind of, bogging down the schedule, you still want to get out and meet your next opportunity. So we created the Power Breakfast, which is early morning networker. The new member orientation is everything that looks like what we're doing now, with a bit more of, additional history of a 100-year-old organization. And within that, we do this virtually at 12 noon, because usually people have a quick moment to join us during the lunch hour. And if we can't catch you then we have a late night event that's usually from about 5:30 to about 9:30 p.m. in the evening, and that's a happy hour. And if you've been to a happy hour, you've seen this particular happy hour. It's 15 minutes of conversation of us sharing some detailed information. And then the rest is drinks and light bites for people to really connect. And this was one of the events that taught us the power of relationship building. We had a young lady who was doing about $250,000 in revenue with this cream that she made with her mom in her dorm room at SMU. And then we had another lady in Frisco who was doing about $10 million, but she wanted an international market. And she was doing that $10 million domestically. Well, they linked up and realized they both had what the other wanted, and they're projected to make $45 million this year. And they did that over drinks and light bites. So if you think relationship building is out, think again. And then, of course, people are in these markets today, especially when you think about millennials in the workspace and just the values that most Black communities have. Giving back is a big part of who we are. And it's no different for the chamber. And this is a program that gave us a lot of fungibility with corporations. We don't ask for a lot, but we do ask corporations to give us a project that they are engaged in our community. And it could be, going to a place like Sand Branch, that's a former freedmen's town that does not have running water, and donating pallets and truckloads of water from Black-owned companies that purify this water so that these Black communities can continue to live and survive until we figure out a plumbing situation that would get them fresh water. Or going into schools and working with high school students, or going to serve at a stew pot or a kitchen where we can help people who are experiencing homelessness. Whatever it may be, the chamber tries to go and give back. And you can see here, these are employees from Goldman Sachs, and somebody brought out a baby who was kind of our mascot for the day. And we just went to a Black community that had a really well-known park, but it was underutilized. And we just went to go clean up. And people from the community started to engage us. This is a church group from Concord Baptist Church, and that's Pastor Carter hiding in the middle in his hoodie there, and some neighbors and some folks. I don't know if y'all recognize this guy here, but I'll just zoom in, see if we can get a close-up of a one special professor and chairman of the organization. And then, of course, our state rep, who just was reelected for House District 100, as we talk about state policies and opportunities there. And then, of course, we have special programs. We started a podcast called the Dallas Speaker Series because we found that they'll typically read something like this, especially if it's got some nice pictures to it. But if you give them something interesting to listen to while they're cleaning up or doing a chore, or maybe, finishing some kind of work for the day, then they're more likely to take that information and actually digest it. So we started a podcast, and the podcast, no secret, is much more well listened to than probably the newsletter is read per se. And it goes out to 10,000 folks at least once a month. And on it, we have different platforms like Breakfast with a Banker, because we noticed that a lot of Black businesses just weren't walking into the banks to even see what the level of opportunity was. They didn't feel welcomed. So we created a platform where we bring everyday bankers who we get to meet with and, sit down with, and we ask them very humanizing questions. And then from there, we break down the basics of how you get into this bank, what they're looking for, what kind of ratios they may put up, against your business to see if you're going to pay back this loan. Just all the different things you need to know to build a relationship with a banker. And then we also talk to leaders, some people like Charles O'Neill, who are making change at very broad levels and making things happen in spaces that we just need to be informed about. And even if we know what they're doing, we want to double click and zoom in and get more detail so we can be a part of those movements. So this is a cool platform that helps us get a lot of the word out. And then we have different camps that we offer throughout the year for programming. We do a Black Business Boot Camp, and we do this really as a partnership with Comerica and AT&T. We give this programming away. So if you can't afford to be a member, or if you don't have any kind of money to go with your great idea or capital, then this is a program that we put in place so that you can come on a monthly basis, or in some cases a quarterly basis, and learn sets of skills that'll help your business grow. So here you can see we've had about 3,000 registrants to come to this one boot camp last year. And we typically do them on a quarterly basis to cover, information like if you have a tax issue and you need a tax attorney, or if you have an accounting issue and you just need somebody to help you with your bookkeeping, or you need an attorney to take you to federal court and represent you on taxes. We do all that kind of work here. So very important for this boot camp and the partners that we bring in to do it. We get a lot of funding from partners to make sure that it remains free. And then, of course, we have what's called the Dallas Accelerator Program, which we just got a grant from the city of Dallas to make this program a reality. It's a program that helps us serve several businesses to help them scale and grow. But to be a part of this program, you've got to have been in business at least 2 to 3 years. You got to have revenue of at least 250,000 or more. And then from there, we want to help you scale with some skills that will get you to that, next $1 million, or help you scale and add those jobs that you need to really make the business grow. And then, of course, like any other chamber, we've got legacy events that speak to who we are and who we've always been. And Ignite the Lights is one of those events that's kind of my baby. I brought this to the chamber because my family has a big focus here on the MLK parade in Dallas. And it was one of the first in 1986. And it grew to be one of the largest. And I didn't think the chamber needed to add another parade, but what we could do to celebrate civil rights and really talk about the impact that we were a part of as America's oldest Black chamber, we wanted to bring a King speaker who's actually done the speech for Mrs. Coretta Scott King. With tears in her eyes, she turned to us and said, "He sounds like my Martin." So that means, of course, we've got to pay the brother, a good amount to come out and speak. But what we do is we ask leaders from the community and people from all walks of life to write a message of love on a little water lantern. And we come together as we listen to Dr. King's words and other speakers who come to share with us, and we ignite our lights. So it's typically an event that we do in the evening. We ask people to bring their families out. And this is critical for us because if you work with businesses, you know that successful businesses are not just about dollars and cents. It's about values. And right now, as our president and our chair have pointed out, values are under attack, and that impacts all the laws and legislation and the rulemaking that will impact who we are and what we do. So we invite our corporate partners to come and share those values and be honest about what they really believe, and to share in the public space where we talk about how a movement shaped not only this country, but it taught communities everywhere how to shape policies from their government and how to speak back. And then, of course, we have educational events like Executive Business Summit, where we bring businesses together and nonprofits together to do a lot of training in a day-long summit. And these take the form of, talking about women's rights in terms of abortion and how that was canceled here in the state and what that meant as a business issue, not just as a women's rights issue, but as a business issue, with now 60% of new businesses and businesses that are Black owned being women owned. So critical in terms of stats and in terms of how we look at the particular issues and what the impact means for businesses across the state. And we typically have the Quest for Success luncheon within the Executive Business Summit. And this is where we honor 8 to 12 businesses and nonprofits who are not just making a profit, but they're making impact as they climb. And then we have a themed event at the end of every year. If you've not been to one of the chamber's themed galas, then I implore you to come and join us this year. This past year, we had the Emerald City Gala. So if you've seen The Wiz and you've seen Diana Ross and Michael Jackson easing on down the road, we had that kind of a themed event. And this year, people said we were crazy when we said cowboy or, something around the Western theme. And then Beyonce came out with an album. So now we look clairvoyant. But we invite you to come join us in December as we celebrate this event. And then something that's not listed that I'll just take a quick privilege to share is we typically do an advocacy day in Austin where we go down and we don't just meet the elected officials, we go and talk to different department heads. So this past year, we went and talked to banking, Texas Health and Human Resources. We talked to a number of them about things that weren't just MWBE related. They had one kind of canned line of speech that they wanted to give to us to share with us about how they had been handling Black folks. And we said, hey, that's great. We definitely want to know that. But also, we want to talk to you about the fact that there's no hospital in the southern sector that's near, this large group of community homes, or that, one, we don't have any programs or access to STEP grants that are allowing us to travel for free across the country to showcase our wares and products that may be 51% more agriculture. So there are some opportunities there. And this is an event that our chairman has brought to the board. And this is something that we're going to do based around this upcoming special session in partnership with TAAACC. So if you're interested, we invite you to come and join us, and we'll put out some information. But Mr. Chair, Mr. President, that concludes my report on the Dallas Chamber.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a quick question before, and then I'd love to open this up, and I yield the floor back to Kristen. Harrison, I want you to talk a little bit about, well, one, you are a large chamber compared to the TAAACC organization. And so there are a few number of you, but there are more numbers of smaller Black chambers on this call. And so would you tell me how you can encourage smaller Black chambers to create the innovation and the usefulness that you all are doing without having the robust membership? Because we're all out here trying to find. I want us to be able to cross-pollinate ideas, but I don't want smaller chambers to feel that, well, we're a small chamber, we're not doing everything that Dallas does. How can you tangibly create programs that can apply to smaller chambers as well? Also, could you share with us what y'all currently did within local politics and how you galvanize community organizations if you already haven't done so?
Yes, sir. Let me start by saying, when I started here at the chamber 4 years ago, we had, I think, 94 due-paying members. So we were, by all metrics, not a large chamber. And even today, I would challenge that because I don't feel like we are a large chamber. But a lot of what we did is we started to build programming kind of in a vacuum. When I started, I had 6 months of regular chamber life, and then the pandemic hit, and all these plans we made were pretty much out the window. We couldn't do all the in-person programming. We couldn't do a golf tournament. We couldn't do all these things that the chamber had this huge legacy around. So it really kind of sucker punched us. It took the wind out of us. But what we started to do is, firstly, I leaned in on my resources. The state chamber was a huge resource. Charles O'Neill was the first person I called when the pandemic hit. I don't know, Dr. O'Neill, I don't know if you remember this, but I had my face in my hands. We didn't know if this chamber was going to survive. And they gave us some ideas about economic surveys for economic recovery, and just sending out a survey. Just taking the email serve list that we had and sending out a survey once a week, that really started to turn things around in that one moment, because then people knew somebody's out there and they're grabbing this information. And if they're getting this information from me, maybe I can ask them for some help. And the second part is probably the most difficult, is if you are a volunteer organization, it's going to be really hard to figure out who's going to answer those calls from 8 to 2 o'clock in the afternoon, who's going to actually set up shop to do that, because without that arm of the operation working, it's nearly impossible to keep the people that you would even engage. So there must be somebody who is dutifully tasked with answering all these different calls or emails that will come in. What we discovered is people are looking for us. There are organizations who would not necessarily have our best interests at heart, but they do need somebody Black to serve on this committee, or they need somebody Black to serve on this board, or they needed, the newspaper needed somebody they could call and say, hey, I need a Black leader to tell me about, economic conditions in this community. And typically, you might see yourself as a small chamber, but really you are in that sweet spot of a footprint that they really can't get to. You know information and people that they don't know. You probably know about that piece of property that's been sitting in the middle of a community of 5 acres and it's undeveloped, or you know about that church that's about to launch this community garden and this cool program. You should not underestimate the amount of information that you know as a Black chamber, or the information coming off the Black wire, because they're pining for it and they don't have it, and they're making decisions without it. And you have to kind of feel a sense of urgency to get that news to the right people, or to even just reach the demographic of Black folks that you serve. And we started with kind of an ethos that Dr. O'Neill gave to us about, this is not a multicultural chamber. We might serve some other folks, we might help some folks along the way, but our focus is on Black. Minority is that's for somebody, but we are the Black Chamber of Commerce. And it changes everything when we walk in the room. It's going to be different than being the Asian chamber or the Hispanic chamber. This, if you're Black here, and as Dr. O'Neill said, this may be dense, but we're working with a totally different demographic. And you know what happens when Black people get together and we mean to make power. It could be dangerous. So expect some things. During the January 6, 2020 situation in DC, I was watching the TV in my office like everybody else. But when you start making waves, people might actually make a bomb threat on you. And that happened. And that's when we knew we might actually be making some headway. As macabre as that may be, that's kind of how we started to gather that we were doing something significant. But I would say right now, the first thing is lean in on your resources. If there is a larger chamber that's making something happen, partner with them. You know, we probably would not be where we are if tech had not slingshotted us in some critical moments. Like this would not be without a lot of different chambers engaging with us. Without Carol Guest telling me about some cool stuff they were doing in Houston, we would have never picked it up. And then finally, I would say you have to travel. If you are not sending somebody somewhere to go get the best information and knowledge, then you're probably not going to grow your chamber. We didn't really hit that big growth moment until I decided to get on the plane and go to the U.S. Black Chamber conference. And of course, this was another Charles O'Neill and Matt Houston kind of innovative thing. They said, hey, Harrison, we need you to get down here and need you to bring some members. And that first year, I couldn't get anybody to come with me. I had to go and see for myself. And it was such an eye-opening experience. I accidentally got some of my biggest goals accomplished because I was sitting in people's seats and they were saying, hey, well, you know, that's my seat, but I guess I'll just sit next to you. And when I ask them what they do, they tell me, hey, we do international trade and commerce with the Commerce Department. Oh, that's funny. I'm trying to go on an international trade mission, trying to take my chamber. These are direct impacts of being in there with my top partners. TAAACC has not only helped us with, access to these kinds of programs, but we got grants from them. And those grants allowed us to grow. So when we got that growth metric, I was able to hire somebody like Tigist, who's a Swiss Army knife for the chamber. And then don't underestimate the ability to go out and get some staff that is not necessarily in the office. You might need somebody virtual who can augment what you're doing. But if you are the chamber executive, even if you're a volunteer, you need somebody that's helping keep all of that detail and information, unless you're going to be that person that's going to answer every email or every call. But that's my 10 cents. And then, Mr. Houston, I'll answer. We were engaged in the city manager's kind of issue here in Dallas. We had a Black city manager who had been here for 7 years, who had really been pushed out by city council. And he had a very willing and very able deputy who was also a Black woman. And they were going to try to bypass her and go to a consultant to come in and really manage the city while they looked for a long-term solution. And we just thought that would be problematic because we got a lot of stuff happening. We got a $1.25 million bond that residents are about to vote on. We got a charter review that really underscores how the city operates, and that's about to change. And then just a bunch of new economic development organizations that don't have any kind of equity focus in them that are about to come online here in Dallas. And so we just thought it was a critical time to be trying to find somebody who doesn't know the city or doesn't know how it runs or is organized here. So we went down to City Hall and we called a bunch of other organizations. We started with the Hispanic chamber here, which we've had kind of an on and off partnership with, but at a critical moment where we didn't want to look like we were just the Black community coming out in support of one Black executive. We wanted to have a multicultural feel. So we called them, we called the Asian Chamber of Texas. We called a number of different organizations, but we primarily leaned into our Black organizations. And this was something that came directly from the history. Maceo Smith, who was one of our great leaders, talked about always walking into a room with at least 20 or more organizations signed to a piece of paper or a document. So he didn't do anything without a council of 22 to make something happen. And that's something that we've leveraged here in real time to get some change. And it worked. We got the new city manager seated at least in this interim role for the next 6 months to a year. So that's going to have some downstream benefits to us. And that's my 10 cents, Mr. Chair, Mr. President.
Mr. Chair, Herring, do I see that you do you have a question? I think you're on mute. But I don't want you to, you're driving also, so I don't want you to mess that up. See if I can unmute you.
I have a question.
Yes.
With the funding you got from the city, what part of the funds, the city funds, were used, or do you know?
So right now we have the city of Dallas. I don't know how other major cities do this, but the city of Dallas does reimbursements. So we got a grant for $250,000, but it's all reimbursable. So I got to spend the money first, and then we got to invoice the city for it. And then, after a net 90, they'll pay us back. So let me say it's not the most aggressive way if you're looking for growth that will help you get there quickly. But something else we were able to do with that is leverage it for a line of credit. we have $250,000 that we are guaranteed if so long as we follow the rules with the city. So I was able to take that to a local bank here and leverage that for $100,000 line of credit. So whenever we make a large purchase on that line of credit that's consistent with this program, then we're able to invoice the city for it. Now I've got a little bit of time between that and my operation to wait until the city can get me that funding back. Then hopefully that answers the question.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any other questions? Well, Harrison, thank you very much for your presentation. We will have this on the recording so that if you all would like to use this as your distribution to your either chamber leaders, your chamber board, you will be able to do so. Give me about a week or so, 10 days or so. Give me 2 weeks. Give me some grace as we produce that video. All right. Thank you, Mr. Blair. Thank you, Ms. Solomon, for joining us. Good deal. Kristen and Charles, would you all like to spearhead our open discussion with TAAACC?
Mr. Matt, just let me say one, Harrison, thank you, man, for that. Matt, we won't want to wait on getting Harrison's slide deck to folk. You can wait for the transcription of of his presentation. We want to make sure that folk get that in their hands. One thing that again, springboarding off of Coretta's question, one of the challenges that we address with Department of Treasury, that we certainly have addressed with state agencies and municipal organizations, is in light of this this fight that we anticipate on the horizon against the very policies that were created in response to Black businesses to increase opportunities, right? Well, most of those policies, most of those programs, I call them square peg round hole deals. It was Black businesses, or in our case, Black chambers, saying these are the kinds of solutions that we think a government entity or a corporate entity should provide. They in turn interpret those in ways that serve to benefit them most, often not reflective of what we actually asked for. And so now the very policies that they created in their mind in response to our needs are being challenged or being done away with. So we got a two-pronged kind of strategy that we have to develop. Is one, to make sure that they understand that these policies, while nominally beneficial, were not really what we asked for. In fact, if they had been exactly what we asked for, there would be no need for what have come to be known as diversity, equity, inclusion kinds of programs. But in fact, what we had asked for was for government, in this case, all governments from local to federal, to be responsive to us in the same way that they have been responsive to other communities to their benefit. What does that mean, O'Neill? That means then that what we have asked for since 1926 and the founding of the first Black chamber is to be regarded the same way that you regard other folk. That's not been the case. It's always been a special kind of, and for example, it's 2024, and we are still being offered how to do business kinds of programs. Well, we were doing how to do business with XYZ when I had a big fro. At some point, we got to understand that we know how to do business, and what these programs are being offered to us is just to forestall full inclusion into the operations of the city, county, state, or federal government. We're not at remedial steps in our experience as business owners. We've got folk, Harrison just talked about folk that go from $250,000 to upcoming $45 million. That you don't do that if you're a rookie in business. You don't do that if you have failed to be able to access all or to demonstrate competence, capability, and work. And so again, I'll say, in addition to the things that Harrison highlighted that I tried to transfer with folk, is if you are somebody's favorite Black chamber, you're not doing something right. And that is the strongest point of advocacy, is to always be able to put the issues important to your membership in front of those folk, and then don't allow a misinterpretation of what your needs are. And again, I hope that adds to the kickstarting of what this discussion could be. And I think those things work irrespective of what size or geography your chamber is located in. Questions, comments? Everybody jump in.
Yes, Charles. This is Michelle Green Ford in Fort Worth. How are you guys this
Good morning.
I've been listening. I am just so excited. I want to first thank President Blair for an incredible report. I'm in my car taking notes, not driving and taking notes, but sitting, but parked and taking notes. So just great information. And thank you for the reminder that we're there to represent our people, and we're not there to win a popularity contest. Because I think that is so valuable for all of us as we try to establish relationship, but to understand that sometimes those relationships may be a little strained when you're pushing for the areas that you need to push for and that are critical for us to move forward. So I just want to thank you guys all for everything you're doing, and great call this morning, really good.
Thank you.
Yes, this is Ben Brown with Ennis. I did want to congratulate the Dallas Chamber on such a great increase in their membership from 94 to, I believe it said 900. Man, that's outstanding. Also, I was there when he spoke up for the interim city manager, Mr. Harrison. I did want to congratulate you on that also. I'm glad we were able to pull that off. The Dallas branch of the NAACP was there as well. So I do want to thank you for that. And also, Mr. O'Neill, I do want to continue to encourage you and congratulate you on your advocacy for Black commerce. I see pictures of you at the White. I think I just saw one last week of you at the White House. So I do want to congratulate you on your efforts. Hopefully, we'll be able to accomplish some great things.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would just say this is Brian Rowland. Good morning. What is important with the changes that are happening, I think our chambers need to start to lean in and address something that Charles talked about, but something that was very prevalent in the conversations. 3 chambers that are on the call had changes in their city, whether it be from city manager or economic development director in their cities, Corpus, Austin, and Dallas, on this phone call. If we don't have a relationship with the city manager, economic development director who is moving money in their city, that's the first part of it. And I think we may want to have an offline conversation of, in 2024, what does that look like? How do we build relationships, but then also move power? Mr. O'Neill, chairman, was at the White House last week. Ron Busby was there the week before and doing great things. But I don't know if there's a transfer of, I won't even say it's information, transfer of dollars from the federal government to the state government to local government that impact Black businesses. That is where people are frustrated and giving up. And unless we have a conversation about, if we're meeting with people at the top, how do the people at the bottom go get 10 cents? what available options are there for either their business and or for opportunities in the community. So it don't have to be individually for them, but if their community is winning, then we'll see a win for them as well.
Mr. President, Mr. Chair, I'll just throw this out there too. The city manager from Dallas he's a finalist to become the city manager of Austin, which has, I believe, a very similar system of government to us. So that's a huge partnership for all of us, because if TC Broadnax ends up in Austin with that budget and that city, that means a whole new set of connections for us in a capital city. So that's just my 10 cents. I just submit that humbly, Mr. Chair, Mr. President, however y'all might use it.
Yes, and so that there should be a conversation between the Austin Black Chamber and the Austin NAACP advocating it for this person if he's been a champion, right? If this person's been a champion for the Dallas Black Chamber and the Dallas community, and he's going to Austin, these organizations should want to get behind this person to make sure that they get out in front and also build, like what you said, which was important, also have other chambers getting the buy-in of some of the programs and ideas of what that person can do, again, for everyone.
Yeah, I think so. Thanks for that, Brian. And Brian is clearly a former city council, former mayor of a city in our state, and most recently in a manager's role in a city. Very well aware of the functioning of those two very critical areas of responsibility in the municipal government. One thing that we do know is it underscores how critical it is that not, as I've started our conversation before the presentation, that chambers have been the wellspring of civic leadership, civic engagement in our history. I think, and I live in Dallas, and I know that for at least 35 years, the city of Dallas has been attempting to inch toward a mayor council form of government. It's called a strong mayor, which would negate the very sincere efforts made to ensure that Kimberly Tolbert was installed, at least on an interim basis. Right now, the city's charter review commission, I know with the current mayor, is attempting to a soft roll, some shift in the city's governance structure from a mayor, from a council manager to a mayor council. They've been trying to do it, again, as I noted, for at least 3 decades. Again, Brian Rowland, having been a mayor in a mayor council or a strong mayor form of government, understands the control that a mayor can exert from an executive role rather than as a chairman of a board role, as in a council manager form of government. Those things are very real and much under threat, expressly because, as I talked in Denton, where the former police chief is now assistant city manager and very likely will be city manager, a Black man, parenthetically from Austin, Texas, who I encourage to make joining the National Forum for Black Public Administrators a priority. Why? Because most professional managers are non-white. Because white folk don't have to have an organization to be given control over the city. But the National Forum for Black Public Administrators has trained professional municipal managers. And so when folks go shopping for city managers in a council manager form of government, they must rely on organizations like the National Forum for Black Public Administrators to get the talent. What does that mean, O'Neill? Well, it means then that, to Brian's other point, when we are attempting to unlock financial resources or money resources from federal government, from state government, if you are not aware of how the machinery works, it's very unlikely that you'll be able to get the resources from that entity, from, in this case, federal government, because it'll hit the state of Texas, where we know we've got a very a hostile operating environment for Black-owned businesses. And so right now, we know that the infrastructure bill, for instance, has literally double-digit billions of dollars slated for investment in the state of Texas, with no real plan for how to make sure that the majority of Texans being non-white, 42% Hispanic, 15% Black, we know that 60% of those funds will not be going to the people that we represent unless we're able to articulate a case for why it must. We can only do that when we have the energy from organizations like those we represent, plus the acumen, the leadership, and professional managers that can take that articulation of need and express it in policy. That's why we're at a fulcrum point or tension point, or as real smart people say, we're at an inflection point in the history of not just this state, but of this country, where demands are being made on the public treasury by people who have made contributions, but have not been able to exact a return on that contribution. That's what's at stake. That's why we're seeing it from education all the way through business. And again, why it's so critical that we begin at this level, business being politics, politics being business, that we begin to impress upon the political environment the very, very real, sincere economic pressure that our communities are feeling. And there's no way that we can articulate a position for quote unquote generational wealth without having an understanding of how the machinery works, and an insistence on the machinery working to our benefit.
I agree 1,000%, Mr. President. Thank you for that summation, and thank you for this healthy discussion. Thank you. I see Dr. Rowland. Appreciate that contribution. I think it's important for us to understand where we were placed within our cities, so that we can know how the municipalities work and how we're engaged, so that we can continue this representation, because this is a part of the process of all politics being local, right? We hear the national announcements of disbursement of resources, but we're not able to grab those resources unless we're actually active and galvanized at the local space. And so I want the Black Chamber of Commerce, primarily as Black leadership centers for our community, to be engaged. Now, we are not the NAACP, we're not the Urban League, but we're like the Joint Chiefs of Staff, where we all have a separate function that serves the same purpose, which is uplifting our people. And so we're able to find the resources to provide the economic dollars for our specifically business ownership spaces within our community. Then we're able to help build the community holistically, and so build our culture holistically. And so, Madam Project Manager, Mr. President, do y'all have? Oh, I see Abdul El Bey raised his hand. Yes, sir, Mr. Chair.
Good morning, everyone. President Charles O'Neill, Chairman Matt Houston. I'd like to say thank you for having Harrison on here today to actually talk about what he talked about chambers. Because this is something that I've talked to Matt, I've talked to Charles about, specifically about the combination of our chambers working together at some point, so that we can economically combat the issue that we are having in our communities. We having the same members that's coming to us that's leaving our chambers based off what we do not provide, or what we are not doing, or what is the chamber's purpose overall. And some of them is going over to our other constituents, which is the quote unquote white chambers, because they are providing what they're looking for. So to be able to hear Harrison and to be able to see what TAAACC is actually doing and put it in place fills my heart with joy. I'm always ready to get out there and make it happen. But this right here is something that I believe that we should not overlook as other chamber leaders, and we should not just hear it and say, well, what I got going on matters more, and I'm not going to hold it long. I just wanted to say that because I appreciate the opportunity to better have a voice. I also do care about each and every chamber that's out here, because everything that happens in one district does affect the other districts, but we have to work together. And that's all I pretty much wanted to say. Thank you, man, for giving me the opportunity.
No problem. Thank you, Abdul. And I want to acknowledge all of y'all in attendance today. Thank you all for being here. In April, I want this number 14 to increase to number 20 on that's on the roll, so that we can get to our 30 markets on this call. But we are moving in the right direction. I do see that I want to acknowledge our Vice Chair, Carol Guest, is on. Carol, how are you? I believe you're traveling, but I want to acknowledge you. Thank you for being on the call.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I'm actually on board, about to head out of Dallas, so I'll stay on mute. But good discussion. Glad to hear everybody's comments, and I'm 100% on board.
Okay, good deal. Thank you very much. We're going to continue this discussion next month. We will love to have another chamber spotlight. We would love to hear from a chamber. We've heard from West Texas. We've heard from the coastal space. We've heard from North Texas. We're looking for someone in the Central District for next month. So Charles, Kristen, whenever we're rolling, we need to get one of our Central Texas chambers on for April. All right?
Yeah, but no problem at all. And I don't think we have any problems with either Waco or Central Texas or Innovation or Greater Austin. I want to add one thing, and I think again, I don't want to be the boy who cried wolf or Chicken Little, the sky is falling in, but I do want to impress upon everybody that's on the call, and again, by extension, because I know you're going to go on and tell the other members who aren't on the call what they missed. I think we're very, very clearly reaching a point that led to the creation of Black Chambers in the first place. It is going to be critical, increasingly so, that we do have a clear articulation of concerns and know how best to exact the return. And this is, Harrison mentioned A. Maceo Smith, who again was the first paid professional staff for the Dallas Black Chamber, and clearly between he and Mac Hanna created our organization, the Texas State Negro Chamber of Commerce. Without corporate support, without public support, and I think as this impending opposition to diversity or affirmative action or whatever, I think it will begin to show up in a negative way on the balance sheet of organizations like ours. I think that we can justifiably expect a retreat from overt financial support for organizations like ours. And so since we know that there's a chance that is coming, then we have to prepare ourselves to restate to our natural audience, that is Black folk and Black folk in business, how critical it is that they support the work that we do, because without us being the buffer zone between them and the enemy, so to speak, they're gonna get hit with this onslaught of stuff and have no idea where it came from. And so I don't think that we can underscore enough the critical role that Black Chambers of Commerce play in being a buffer zone between this, I'll say, carnage in the marketplace and what the possibilities are if we're able to get our issues traction in the marketplace. And so that's where, again, it's in the extended conversation very clearly, but I don't want us to leave here thinking that we can continue business as usual when we know that this other thing is sitting out there just waiting to eat us up.
Great words, and I think those are great words to end in this call, because it's really important to understand the barstool approach for our organization, in which we have public support, corporate support, but most importantly, one that we need to strengthen is our community support, not only through advocacy, but also financially in our business model, because we as an organization don't want to be relying on people outside of our community to operate. Because if that's the case, we won't serve our constituents. We won't be able to. And so it's really important to find initiatives to create surveys so that chambers can understand what the community needs, how we can provide that service to the community, and to provide a financial value of support so that that organization can continue. Because the more members you have as a Black chamber, the more leverage you have with the government agencies or with the corporations as well, in terms of creating making decisions within our community. So we need to have a robust 3-tiered space with emphasis on our community businesses. All right. If there are no other questions, I want to thank you all for attending the March Monday Morning Momentum. It is 11:23 a.m. You all have a great morning and have a great week.